Crows develop human-level intelligence in 5 million years. The lone hare freezes, a statue of petrified fur in fear. It has sensed something not with its ears, which twitch against the breeze, nor with its nose, which wrinkles at the scent of damp earth and pine. It has sensed a change in the geometry of the world. High above, the familiar pattern of sunlight through the canopy has been disturbed, not by a cloud but by a collection of deliberate intersecting shadows. There are 4 of them, perfectly spaced silent silhouettes against the blinding glare of the afternoon sun. They are not circling, not gliding. They are holding their position with an unnerving stillness, waiting. The hare's heart hammers a frantic rhythm against its ribs. Its instincts, honed over 1,000,000 years of mammalian terror, scream a single word: run. But which way? The shadows are a compass of death, pointing towards every possible escape route. A twig snaps to its left. A pebble skitters down a rock face to its right. A low, clicking sound, like stones being tapped together, emanates from the dense thicket ahead. These are not the sounds of a clumsy fox or a prowling lynx. They are coordinated, strategic. The hare bolts a streak of brown lightning aimed for the only remaining corridor of open ground. As it bursts from the tree line, the trap is sprung, not from above, but from the ground. A fine woven net of knotted vines, previously hidden beneath a layer of loose leaves, springs upward, pulled taut by a stone counterweight a dozen meters away. The hare tumbles, ensnared. It thrashes, but the mesh is strong, the knots expertly tied. Then they descend. They are not eagles or hawks, raptors driven by raw, predatory hunger. Their movements are measured, precise. 4 large dark birds land around the struggling mammal. Their feathers are the iridescent black of freshly cooled obsidian. But it is their eyes that truly paralyze. They are not the simple black beads of a common bird. They are deep, intelligent, and chillingly analytical. One of them, its head feathers slightly flecked with gray, steps forward. It does not use its beak. Instead, held in a dexterous 3-toed talon is a piece of sharpened flint, carefully napped to a cruel point. The bird cocks its head, observing the hare's panicked breathing, its frantic pulse visible in its neck. The gaze is not one of hunger, but of appraisal, of problem-solving. And as the sharpened stone is brought to bear with surgical precision, the last thing the hare ever knows is the cold, dispassionate curiosity of an intelligence that should not be. To understand this world, this dominion of feathered intellect, we must turn our gaze back, not 5 million years, but 66. In our timeline, the Chicxulub impactor struck the Earth with the force of 10 billion atomic bombs, a cataclysm that scoured the planet and ended the reign of the dinosaurs. It was an event of absolute erasure, wiping the slate clean and allowing the meek to inherit the Earth. Small, furtive mammals, hiding in the shadows of giants, emerged from their burrows into a world of opportunity, an empty stage upon which the drama of Cenozoic evolution could unfold, eventually leading to primates, to hominids, and to us. But in the genesis of this alternate Earth, the dice of cosmic chance rolled differently. The impactor was a fraction smaller, or perhaps its angle of entry was a degree shallower. The resulting cataclysm was still apocalyptic, a world of fire, then of freezing dark. The great Saurian dynasties crumbled, yet the slate was not wiped entirely clean. It was merely scarred. In pockets of the globe, the devastation was less total. More complex ecosystems, though battered and broken, survived. This single, subtle change in the initial conditions had profound consequences. The age of mammals did not begin with the explosive, unopposed radiation that defined our own history. The niches were not empty. While many of the non-avian dinosaurs perished, their smaller feathered cousins, the birds, found themselves in a world that, while hostile, offered a unique advantage. They could fly over the shattered landscapes, seeking out the scattered refuges of life. And among these avian survivors, one lineage possessed a latent spark of brilliance: the corvids. Even in our own world, crows, ravens, and jays demonstrate a startling intelligence. They craft tools, solve multi-step puzzles, remember human faces for years, and possess a social complexity that rivals that of great apes. Their brains, while structured differently, have a neuron density comparable to that of primates. They are, in essence, a parallel experiment in the evolution of high cognition. In our world, the ascendancy of mammals, especially primates and then carnivorans, kept this avian intelligence in check. There was simply too much competition. But on this wounded earth, the mammals' rise was blunted. They remained small, locked in a fierce battle for survival in the mid to lower tiers of the food web. The corvids, meanwhile, found themselves in a world that actively selected for their unique talents. The fractured environment was a global puzzle box. To survive, a species needed not just strength or speed, but cunning, adaptability, and foresight. A corvid that could remember the location of 100 different food caches over 1,000 square kilometers, or invent a new tool to extract grubs from scorched timber, was a corvid that would survive. Generation after generation, the selective pressure was relentless and unidirectional. Get smarter or die. The very chaos of the post-impact world became the forge for their minds. The first few million years following this altered extinction event were a crucible. This was not the slow, gradual expansion of mammals into empty roles we know from our own fossil record. It was a frantic, high-stakes arms race. On the ground, the mammals were evolving under the shadow of a new kind of predator, one that could think in 3 dimensions. The ancestors of rodents and rabbits did not simply become faster, they became masters of subterfuge. We see the emergence of species with radically advanced burrowing capabilities, creating subterranean labyrinths far too complex for the birds to excavate. Nocturnality became the norm for any surface-dwelling creature smaller than a dog. The world's days belonged to the corvids, the world's nights to the mammals, a planet cleft in two by the rising and setting of the sun. To the developing corvid species, which we might call Corvus sapiens, this presented new evolutionary challenges that only intelligence could solve. Simple ambush from above was no longer sufficient. So began the genesis of technology. It started simply. A bird might drop a large stone onto a burrow entrance to trap a mammal inside, then return later to excavate its cornered prey. But this was inefficient. Over millennia, this crude technique was refined. We see evidence in the fossil record of collaborative group hunting, flocks communicating with a language of clicks and whistles that grew ever more complex would work together. Some birds, the beaters, would make noise at one end of a thicket. Others, the drivers, would strategically block escape routes, funneling panicked prey towards a third group, the trappers, who had prepared pitfalls or simple snares. This level of cooperation requires not just communication, but a theory of mind, the ability to understand what another individual is thinking and planning. Their tool use also exploded in complexity. The simple shaped twig for extracting insects evolved into a kit of specialized implements. Certain coastal populations of Corvus sapiens learned to craft hooks from bone to pull mollusks from rocks, Forest dwellers developed barbed spears from sharpened sticks to jab into tree hollows. We even find the first evidence of metatools, a tool used to create another, more refined tool. Fossilized workshops show collections of hard hammerstones used to flake shards from flint nodule shards, which were then used to whittle and sharpen their wooden implements. This is a cognitive leap of immense significance. It demonstrates abstract, forward-thinking planning. The bird is no longer just solving an immediate problem. It is preparing for future problems. This burgeoning intellect had a profound effect on their social structure. Nests transformed from simple cups of twigs into vast communal structures woven into the canopies of ancient trees or clinging to sheer cliff faces. These were not mere rookeries, they were proto-cities. They show evidence of specialized districts, nurseries for the young, defended granaries for storing nuts and smoked meat, and designated workshops for tool manufacturing. And within these cities, a new force was shaping their evolution: culture. Different flocks, separated by geography, began developing unique dialects, tool-making traditions, and hunting mythologies passed down through generations not by instinct, but by learning. A fledgling Corvus sapiens was not born knowing how to knap flint, it was taught by an elder. This cultural transmission allowed for a much faster accumulation of knowledge than genetic evolution alone, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerated their cognitive development at a breathtaking pace. By 5 million years post-impact, they were not just clever birds. They were a civilization on the verge of dawning. Fast-forwarding through the aeons, the planet these sapient birds inherited was profoundly different from our own. As their intelligence solidified, they did not just adapt to the world, they began to consciously shape it. The initial species, Corvus sapiens, began to radiate outwards, speciating to master every environment on the globe. Over a period of 30 million years, the family Corvidae produced a dynasty of intelligent life as diverse as the primates of our own timeline. On the vast, wind-swept plains, a species we could call Corvus cursor evolved. Faced with fleet-footed mammalian prey, their wings gradually became vestigial, acting more as stabilizers for their high-speed running. They became bipedal pursuit predators, nearly 2 meters tall, with powerful legs and long, spear-like beaks. They lived in nomadic flocks, their deep, booming calls echoing across the grasslands as they tracked herds of horse-like herbivores, which they hunted with thrown, stone-tipped javelins. Their society was built around the herd, their culture rich with oral histories of great hunts and epic migrations following the changing seasons. In the deep, humid jungles, the arboreal Corvus umbra became masters of stealth and intricate construction. Slighter in build, with elongated talons perfect for gripping branches and manipulating materials, they lived in architecturally stunning cities woven into the upper canopy. They were masters of bioengineering, cultivating specific fungi on fallen logs for food, and weaving the silk of massive invertebrates into their nets and building materials. Their language was one of quiet whistles and subtle gestures, a necessity for moving unheard through the dense foliage. They developed sophisticated traps using complex systems of levers and counterweights made of wood and vine. Perhaps most astonishing were the Corvus pelagicus, the mariners of the archipelagos. They retained powerful wings, but their feet became partially webbed. They built great catamaran-like rafts from bundles of buoyant reeds, lashing them together with rope they wove from fibrous coastal plants. Upon these floating platforms they could journey for weeks at a time, harvesting the bounty of the sea. They learned the patterns of tides and constellations, navigating by the stars at night. They practiced a form of aquaculture, building stone weirs in tidal zones to trap fish. Their beaks evolved into a diverse toolkit, some with fine points for prying shellfish, others with serrated edges for gripping slippery fish. Their vocalizations were melodic and song-like, a language capable of carrying for vast distances over the open water. This divergence created not just different species, but different philosophies. The plains runners, with their vast open skies, developed cosmic religions, seeing the patterns of the stars as a divine script. The forest dwellers, living in a world of shade and dappled light, fostered a more introspective pantheistic view, seeing intelligence in the trees, the rivers, and the earth itself. The seafarers became pragmatic empiricists, their knowledge system based on observation, prediction, and the unforgiving logic of the ocean. They fought wars not just over territory, but over ideas. The archaeological record shows fortified canopy cities burned to the ground and coastal rafts smashed in violent clashes. They were as capable of brilliance, art, and creation as they were of brutality and destruction. They had achieved a complex global civilization long before the first primate in our world had even thought to stand upright. In such a world, what is the fate of humanity? The answer is simple and stark. There is no. The evolutionary pathway that led to us was utterly and completely severed. Our story begins with a small, unassuming primate ancestor, Purgatorius, surviving the KPG extinction. In the timeline we know, these creatures found a world ripe with opportunity. The arboreal niches were largely vacant, allowing them to evolve into the vast and diverse primate order. The journey from the trees to the savanna, the pressure to stand upright, the freeing of the hands to use tools, all of these crucial steps were predicated on the existence of an environment where they were possible. On the world of the Corvid dynasty, those conditions never existed. The trees were not empty. They were the dominion of the Corvus Umbra, intelligent, tool-using, and fiercely territorial beings who would have viewed any proto-primate not as a fellow traveler on the road of evolution, but as a potential meal, or at best, a pest. There would be no haven in the canopy for a small mammal to develop grasping hands and stereoscopic vision. The very air was hostile, patrolled by eyes that could see a scurrying rodent from 100 meters up. Any early hominid attempting to venture onto the savanna would have been met not by lumbering, slow-witted predators that could be outsmarted, but by the coordinated javelin-wielding packs of Corvus Cursor. The cognitive niche, that space for a large-brained, problem-solving social creature, was already filled. And nature abhors a redundancy. The entire mammalian line would have been relegated to a perpetual state of secondary importance. They would be the prey, the scavengers, the creatures of the night and the deep burrows. Without the primates, there is no Australopithecus, no Homo habilis, no spark of fire wielded in a human hand. The grand pageant of human civilization, our art, our science, our empires, our follies, is a story that is never written. The Earth's geology would be different. There would be no massive strip mines carving wounds into the planet, for Corvid technology would be based on renewable resources: wood, fiber, bone, and stone. They had no need for mass-produced metal, their delicate avian skeletons unable to bear the weight of heavy armor or machinery. Their cities would not be sprawling scars of concrete and steel, but organic, integrated structures that rise and fall with the life of the forest or the cliffside. The atmosphere would be cleaner, the planet's biodiversity, aside from the species they drove to extinction, more intact. It would be in some ways a paradise, but it would be a paradise with no room for us. To contemplate this world is to contemplate our own profound contingency, to realize that the existence of humanity was not an inevitability, but a fragile, perhaps even unlikely accident. This world, ruled for tens of millions of years by avian minds, might seem a triumph of an alternative evolutionary path, a planet where intelligence flourished without the industrial devastation wrought by humanity. Their civilization, based on biology and intricate craft, seems to have achieved a sustainable balance. Their wars were destructive but localized. Their impact on the global climate was negligible. One might even be tempted to see this as better Earth, a world where consciousness arose in a form that was more in tune with the rhythms of the planet. But this assumes that their consciousness is anything like our own, and therein lies the slow-burning, horrifying truth. Their intelligence did not emerge from the context of mammalian evolution, from the warmth of parental care, group bonding, and the nuanced emotional states that govern primate societies. It arose from the cold calculus of flocking behavior. Their morality is not based on empathy, but on a kind of ruthless game theory logic. An individual has value only in its utility to the flock. A sick or injured corvid is not cared for. It is efficiently dispatched and its resources recycled. Their cooperation is a marvel of strategy, but it is utterly devoid of compassion. They are a civilization of pure, unadulterated reason, and their long-term project has finally become clear. After millions of years of observation, of cataloging every species, every weather pattern, every geological process, the various corvid civilizations came to a global consensus. The world, they determined, was a flawed system. It was chaotic, inefficient, and prone to unpredictable events like volcanoes, earthquakes, and random mutations that created suboptimal life forms. They saw the entire biosphere not as a home to be cherished, but as a grand puzzle to be solved, a messy nest to be tidied. And with their patient, terrifyingly long-sighted intelligence, they began. They are not conquering the world in a human sense, they are re-engineering it. Slowly, methodically, they are culling entire ecosystems. A forest is deemed to have redundant plant species. These are systematically poisoned with carefully concocted natural toxins. A grassland supports herbivores that are energetically inefficient. They are hunted to extinction, replaced by domesticated creatures that provide a higher yield. Rivers are diverted over centuries, not with massive dams, but by the planting of specific, fast-growing trees whose root systems slowly alter the flow of water, meticulously reshaping continents over geological time. Their ultimate goal is a world of perfect, streamlined order, a planet whose every function, from the nitrogen cycle to the albedo effect, is controlled and optimized by their collective intellect. The Earth is becoming an artifact, a planetary-scale clockwork mechanism of their own design. The final chilling image of this world is not one of violence or overt tyranny, but of an eerie, profound silence. A world